So hello guys, welcome to the channel Stolovky.sk and to the Academy of Board Games. Today we have a very special interview straight from Essen Spiel 2018, and my dear guest is Morten Monrad Pedersen from Denmark, from Stonemaier Games. So Morten, welcome, and could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What do you do in Stonemaier Games?
Sure, and thank you for having me on board today. I'm basically the solo guy of Stonemaier Games, so my team and I do solo modes for the games that Stonemaier Games publish, and then I do a little bit of everything else. I do community work on Board Game Geek and on Facebook. I help Jamie when he wants to discuss business matters, do proofreading, basically anything that's not distribution and the nitty-gritty of business.
And I also hear that you are a designer of automa or solo modes for games. Is that the, let's say, primary focus of your design, solo modes and automas? And why? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. That's solo modes are basically 90% of what I do. Well, some years ago, my son was born, and then if any of you have children, you'll know that the amount of spare time drops like a rock. So I'd heard about this thing called solo gaming, and it sounded a bit weird to me, but well, it was a way to keep on playing board games when I had a small child. And so I found out it's actually pretty fun to play solo games, and then I started a blog about it, and I had been talking to Jamie about various stuff, and when he wanted a solo mode for viticulture, he asked me because he knew I was into that and was blogging about it.
About this solo mode, could you tell us more, like what is maybe the target audience, or why you decide always to include also the solo mode in the games?
Yeah, well, Jamie is very much about inclusion, so he wants a very large player range. So he basically won't publish anything that's not at least 2 to 5 players, but he wants to go beyond that, so 1 to 6 or 1 to 7, so as many people as possible can enjoy the games. And solo also has the advantage that you don't need to get your gaming group together, so if you have an hour in the evening, after the family has gone to bed or whatever, you can get in a game yourself. So that way you can play our games much more when we have the solo mode.
One additional question about the solo, and if you could compare the solo mode in the board game, let's say with artificial intelligence in the online game, or if there is a possibility maybe that Stonemaier is looking at this direction as well, going online or applications for your games.
Well, so far we're not doing anything ourselves. We are board game only, cardboard only. But some of our games are being implemented. Scythe is now out on Steam with an artificial intelligence, but it's nothing we have been involved in. Jamie has been seeing the app progress, I think, but we haven't been involved other than that. And other games are also in development for apps, but again, it's other studios handling that and the licensing from us. And well, of course, the difference between the cardboard AIs we make and real AIs is, of course, huge. And our cardboard AIs don't play the game, they play a simplified version of the game that intersects with the game that the human player plays. So that it's not as much work to run this artificial opponent.
I will go a little bit back to the beginning, and I would like to ask you, how did you end up at Stonemaier Games? How did you and Jamie meet, or why Stonemaier? How did that come about, Stonemaier Games? How did you end up there?
Yeah, well, that's a lucky coincidence, because some years ago I was in Tuscany visiting vineyards with my family, and then maybe the day after I got home, this new Kickstarter started for a game called Viticulture, which is about running a vineyard in Tuscany. So, well, I just had to check it out. And so I wrote a mail to the creator of this game, Jamie Stonemaier, and asked whether I could see the rules. And so he sent them to me. Back then it wasn't normal to have the rules available on a Kickstarter. This was the early days. So, given the way my brain is wired, I noticed all the typos, sent them back to him, and we started having a back and forth. and I play tested it with my wife, gave him feedback, stuff like that, and then we just got to talking over email more and more. And then when he needed a solo mode, he contacted me about it, and then just gone from there. And at one point I got a part-time employment in the company.
What does your typical day look like? How does it work when someone designs board games or solo modes? What do you do actually in a typical day?
Well, I sit by a computer and I write emails to people, and I update on rulebook. That's the vast majority of my work. You should think that I would be playing board games, but I play fewer board games now than I used to, because we spend so much time on our own stuff. For the solo modes we could have Scythe, I think we had more than 300 external playtests, as well as tons of our own. And running a project like that actually takes a lot of time. We had a forum where all playtesters could post questions, give feedback, give suggestions, and that just takes so much time to have all that communication, and then update the rulebook, update the rulebook, update the rulebook, and so on. So basically I'm sitting by the computer communicating and writing rulebooks.
I would switch the topic now. So we are at the Spiel and talking, visiting booths, looking for new games, and specifically maybe you could introduce what new games this year Stonemaier released, and just to have an idea what is going on and new stuff.
Yeah, so at Gen Con we released My Little Scythe, the family-friendly version of Scythe that started out as a fan project with this guy Hobie Chow and his daughter, 6-year-old daughter Vienna. They wanted to do a version of Scythe that they could play together, so they made a My Little Pony version, and well, it got a lot of popularity on Board Game Geek and I think for Facebook, and so Jamie picked it up and was turned into a real game. That was pretty cool. Other than that, at Gen Con we also released The Rise of Fenris, a campaign-based expansion for Scythe, and then recently we released Between Two Castles, which is a follow-up for Between Two Cities. It's more of a gameless version of Between Two Cities. So that's mainly what has been happening this year, and then next year we will of course also have some stuff. We'll have a new release at the beginning of next year, January, February, and we'll have an expansion for Euphoria coming out next year. We're just doing proofreading right now on that.
I was gonna ask something personal about your personal taste in board games. What do you like to play? If you ever get a chance to play, what do you play? Or maybe what games you picked up for, I don't know, yourself, your family, friends? What is your favorite game, and maybe a mechanic in the game?
Yeah, well, my favorite game is quite different from the work I do myself. It's called Dawn of the Sets. It's a solo game, and it's Ameritrash all the way through. And I normally do Eurogame, but it's just the best implementation of a movie I have ever seen. You really feel like you're in a zombie movie when you play that game. And so even though the rules are of a much higher complexity than what I normally have time for, I just love that game. Other than that, I like Uwe Rosenberg. Puerto Rico is one of my old favorites. Blood Bowl from Games Workshop. Nusfjord last year, Uwe Rosenberg, was a very nice game. I think that's some of the favorites, yeah. Oh yeah, Onirum. Onirum, that's a favorite. Do you know that
solo
one?
As well, yeah.
Yeah, solo, 2-player. That's when I've had a stressful day and have half an hour before I go to bed, I sit down with Onirum and relax. It's awesome for making me calm down after a stressful day.
One more would be about this year's Spiel. If you have any good tip, what we should look at if you had a chance to see something interesting.
Yeah, for me the big one was Reichold, the latest Uwe Rosenberg. Then I've been interested in seeing Fine Sand from Friedemann Friese. It will be my first game in his Fable series, so I'm really looking forward to see how that plays out. I think those two were probably the highlights for me to get to check them out.
I think we're good. So I'm just going to close out. So thank you very much, Morten, to spend time with us today, and keep bringing us the exciting stuff that you've been doing so far. Thank you very much for meeting.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be on board.